Earlier this year, the hit live streaming role-playing group Critical Role announced that their publishing arm, Darrington Press, will be coming out with a new role-playing game called Candela Obscura. As a fan of Critical Role and as someone who just recently got into role-playing games earlier this year, I was really intrigued by Candela Obscura. I'm not a fan of the horror genre at all whatsoever, but I wanted to give it a shot, so I watched their actual plays on their Twitch channel, and I've also participated in the example assignment that they had at Gen Con called Dress to Kill. Now, the people at Darrington Press was kind enough to send me a complimentary copy of the core rulebook for Candela Obscura. They did not pay me for this review or anything like that, but I did get this for free, so please keep that in mind as you're watching this video. Now, before I get into this review, I do want to give a special thank you to Alex Hill from Darrington Press, as well as the community that's in the Darrington Press Discord. They've had some great conversations and questions and answers that really helped me understand a little bit more about the game itself and the rule books and how the spirit of the game is captured. And I also want to give a thank you to all those who I'm currently playing Candela Obscura with online and in person, especially Valkyrie's Vault for hosting our gaming sessions. With that said, let's start this review with the book design and the artwork. Now, from the start, the book cover is deliriously captivating. The standard edition cover reflects the theme and the set scene on the live stream show and beautifully captures the essence and spirit of the game. In fact, it's hard to tell what the color of the cover is because depending on the light, it can look very dark green or it can look almost black even. And part of me wonder if this is intentional to show the two realities of the world of Candela Obscura, the mundane, which is our world, and the flare, which is the world of magic. The limited edition is also just as beautiful with a brighter green color that's highlighted with golden emboss that emanates the hopeful light of Candela Obscura, the secret organization that attempts to protect the world from the flare. Now, as captivating as the limited edition is, I actually prefer the standard edition because it reflects the game a lot more, especially with the grittiness that you have in a horror genre paranormal game. The artwork inside the book is just as gorgeous as the covers. Using a watercolor painting style for the openings of the chapters, the art does a phenomenal job of capturing the feel of the game's themes and aesthetics, providing a murky, ambiguous picture of the world while allowing players to feel connected to it enough to get a sense of what it would be like to live in it. So we talked about the cover and the artwork, but the design inside the book itself is also amazing. Although it's a rule book, it was designed for it to feel like an actual living and breathing document and artifact from the game's world. Included in the design are additional newspaper articles that give Easter eggs and world-building details for the reader to enjoy, handwritten notes from a light keeper that tell a framing story for the reader to be engaged and enthralled with, and hidden code symbols and messages for you to try and decipher. These additional details definitely give the core rulebook an exciting way to interact with an abstract and fictional world. Now, as great as that design is, for me, the most difficult part about trying to enjoy and read the book are the handwritten notes that they included in here. They're actually incredibly difficult to read, so it took me longer to read and understand, which prevented me from being able to enjoy and stay engaged with that part of the design consistently throughout the book. One other thing I really enjoy about the rulebook is that not only does it give you enough details for you to create a backstory for your characters, but they also provide a lot of example assignments for you to read through and see what you can explore in the game. These example assignments, or what most people in the RPG world will call adventures or campaigns, are short 3 to 4 sentence story ideas based on a location or organization that's mentioned in the book. This allows opportunities for those who want to try their hand at being a GM, but don't feel creative enough to have a starting point for creating their own assignment if they wish. Now, outside of the physical rulebook, Darrington Press partnered up with Demiplane, which is a platform for digital tools and content for tabletop role-playing games. They provide a character creation tool and a digital version of the rulebook for Candela Obscura. This is a really well-done resource, and currently it's on sale for $19.99, which is normally $29.99. Now that we've gone over the artwork and the book design, let's talk about the mechanics and the system of Candela Obscura. The system, which is a set of rules for how to play a game based on a character's actions as well as the dice results of its player, is a new system developed by Darrington Press called Illuminated Worlds. Heavily influenced by games such as Blades in the Dark and Vaesen, Illuminated Worlds operates on a series of 6-sided dice, or D6 for short. A player rolls to determine the outcome of their action or decision in the game with those dice. Depending on a predetermined skill set, some dice may be gilded, meaning that if that die is rolled either by itself or with another ordinary die, and that result is selected for the outcome, then the gilded die will give the player an additional drive. A drive is an ability a player has to be able to add more die to their roll. A gilded die is usually a different color than the ordinary die, and typically there are 6 ordinary dice and 3 gilded dice available to use, although the game rules state that no one can roll more than 6 dice total for a roll. Unlike the popular D20 system that a lot of people associate Dungeons & Dragons with, Illuminated Worlds focuses more on the storytelling component of the game. So you're not going to see stat blocks for characters or calling for an initiative roll or how much damage someone will take based on a dice roll result. Rather, the player will describe what they want to do, and then they roll to determine if they get failures, which is usually a 1 of 3, a mixed success, which is 4 or 5, a full success, which is 6, or critical success, which means you rolled 2 6s or more. Now, in most cases, the highest result is taken, although sometimes the player might take the gilded die result, which might be a 4 or 5, over a ordinary die result, which is a 6, in order to get that drive back. When a player creates a character, they have 5 roles they can choose from each role having 2 specialties for a total of 10 possible selections. The roles include Face, which is a charismatic character, Muscle, which is a protector, Scholar, which is intellectual, Slink, which is nefarious, and Weird, which usually focuses on the arcane. Each type of role and specialty has its own predetermined set of actions that are separated into 3 categories. Nerve for actions like move, strike, or control, Cunning for actions such as sway, read, or hide, and Intuition for actions such as survey, focus, and sense or arcane. The character's role also determines where starting drives and gilded dice are placed. From there, players get to add up to 4 more action points and up to 6 additional drives of the player's choosing. And then for every 3 drives in a category, players will receive a resistance, which will allow them to re-roll their starting dice pool if they don't like the result of their die roll. And finally, the player will choose 2 special abilities for their character, one based on their role and another based on their specialty. All right, so now that we've gone over the mechanics and how to play the game, let's talk about the setting of Candela Obscura. The world of Candela Obscura takes place in 1907 in the Fairlands, a region in the country of Hale. The capital city, New Fair, is the main robust city of the region with numerous other areas surrounding it. The setting is described as the early onset of the Industrial Electric Revolution, with electricity having just been developed recently. Half of the core rulebook is committed to the details of the world of the game, which builds up the world and lore more expansively than what viewers and players were accustomed to previously. The designers paid special care to the book and development of this world to ensure that some of the larger issues that exist in our current world are not a reality of this world, by establishing that major phobias such as racism, sexism, homotransphobia, ableism, etc. do not exist in this world systematically, though there still may be bad actors present. Some of the ways they do this are including preferred pronouns of non-playable and playable characters, art that's inclusive and represents people of color, and by normalizing all relationships. This intention of inclusion to create a safe space in a world of horror is truly aspirational. And on a personal note, as someone who has hearing loss, it was really touching to see a character mentioned in this book that has hearing loss and does sign language as well. So now that we've talked about the mechanics and how to play the game, as well as the setting of Candela Obscura, let's talk a little bit about the roleplay experience itself. Now, I was able to play this game earlier this year at Gen Con, where they hosted some one-shot opportunities for people who wanted to play, as well as playing this online with a group of people weekly and in person on a monthly basis at my local gaming store. Now, I'm really new to tabletop role-playing games. I just started getting into it this year, and I'm very used to Dungeons & Dragons, and so this sort of genre and style of play is very different, but that's what I really like about this, because this is more focused on the storytelling and the narrative and the role that you're playing versus some of the crunchy dice rolls that you might have in Dungeons & Dragons, which you could definitely have a narrative-driven story gameplay in Dungeons & Dragons, but it's definitely known for throwing dice for, attacking and for spell casting and things like that. Whereas Candela Obscura, you don't do that a whole lot. You use the dice to really help determine what direction the story is going to go, and you really focus in on connecting with other players and the game master in the game and thinking about how you want to tell the story moving forward with what you're trying to accomplish with your objective in the assignment. And I think that's what's really cool, is that this really encourages a lot of collaboration with the storytelling component of it. You can definitely do it individually and isolate it by per person basis, and we kind of saw that in chapter 2 of Candela Obscura for Critical Role, where individual players have kind of a different drive or a different intention and focus for the story that the other players are not connected with. But this game really does encourage people to collaborate with the storytelling as well. And I really find that a really cool experience. That is something that, if you're looking for something different than Dungeons and Dragons, this is something that you might want to check out, especially if you really like telling stories over, am I going to roll for a attack for against a monster or something like that. One of the things that we did in our recent in-person Candela Obscura game is that our game master told one one of our players that they had a bleed detector. And usually, you know, the game master might describe what it looks like or might describe how it sounds or how it feels. In this situation, he really encouraged that player to be the one to describe all those things. And so it really was a cool way to provide players agency to be invested in the game and the story itself versus having it all being described to them as a game master. And I think that's really cool because a lot of times you have a vision of what this looks like and be able to articulate that in the gameplay so that not only is this something in your mind, but now it's shared throughout the rest of the group. It becomes part of that story, and it creates a lot more buy-in for the characters to be able to feel like they're molding that story and it's not just something they happen to participate in as part of the game master's plan. I will say one of the things I found interesting about what the core rulebook suggests is they encourage you to select your action points and your drives and all those things to build your character sheet and then come up with a backstory based on that. And that's definitely a way to do it, but you can also do it the other way where you come up with the backstory first and then you select your action points and drives and gilded dice and all that stuff after you create your backstory. And that's what I did. Well, one of my characters, I played a soldier where I came up with a backstory that they got in a fight with someone from Otherwhere. And in that fight, they actually got slashed in the face with a knife. And come to find out, that knife had some magical flair embedded into it. And so now, as part of my character, it has some sort of access to the flair naturally because it's been embedded in that person's, biological makeup now. And so using that, I actually decided to give my action points a little bit along the lines of the sense ability that I wouldn't have picked for a soldier because typically soldiers wouldn't necessarily have that sort of connection in and of itself as a role. But because of that backstory, I was able to change my action points around and have a completely different character because of that. So one of the neat things about this core rulebook is that it really encourages you to adapt and make the game your own. So even though they give you a lot of suggestions on how to do things in the game, if you want to make some changes so that way it makes a lot more sense to you or help support the story that you and your characters and your players want to tell, they really encourage that. And so definitely think about if that's something you want to do, if you want to follow this, or because that you find that might be a little bit more limiting to what you want to do, go ahead and adjust for those sort of things and make sure that it's something that makes sense to you and to the rest of the group and that you're going to have fun doing that as a role play experience. Overall, I really like this game. I encourage anyone to give this a chance and to try it out, especially if you're looking for a game that's not Dungeons and Dragons or fantasy. I know that sometimes those kinds of games might be intimidating because there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, especially with the dice mechanics of it all, with what you have to roll for attacking and then for damage and all the modifiers and all of the little conditions that you have to follow through. With Candela Obscura, they seem to really focus more on having you tell the story and use that as the driving momentum for playing the game versus, when do you roll for what, things like that. Because the game master will tell you when you have to roll for those sort of things. And it's really straightforward with what you're doing as well, too. So if you're looking for a new genre, like horror paranormal, as I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of that genre, but I really enjoy playing this game. And this is one of my favorite tabletop role-playing games now. And so this is a great one to introduce yourself to a new kind of tabletop role-playing games. Or if you and your friends just want to do something a little bit different, this is definitely one that you can jump into and just start playing. You definitely have to read the core rule book and kind of get a sense of what the world is like, but you don't have to read the book entirety to get up and running with it. So check it out. Let me know what you think about this game if you played it. Love to hear your thoughts about this.